the Pirate Party of Reykjavík position on urban planning and city design. What we think is important for the future of the city is to create a modern city that works for people at human scales, that involves green areas, nature, but also increases urban density and creates a possibility of having services and shops and all sorts of things that we use within walkable distances, and to have a walkable distance to high-speed public transit. We want to, I'm going to go to the first slide here. Reykjavík, as we know, is a very rapidly growing city. Our population is increasing much faster than anticipated, even having anticipated fast growth. And this leads to a very high need for housing that we are slightly behind on even now, when we have done very well building new housing for the past about 9 or 10 years. And this also leads to a marked increase in cars on the roads. We are currently seeing 60 to 70 new cars every week, which is not a sustainable rate of increase. It's impossible to accommodate all these cars by building traditional roads, multi-layer intersections and parking spaces. Especially it's impossible to handle all these cars with parking spaces on the ground floor. So our solution is to use a straightforward method of modern city planning that uses democratic tools to make sure that the growth works for the people who live there. We use modern practices, we consult architects, city design specialists, and people who have come here to help us from all over the world. We've had very interesting seminars from people from Vienna, from Canada, and we are really looking into how to best make a city that works for people as we are going from being a very low density city to trying to become at least a moderate density city. So yes, more density, but it has to be done well, and it has to be done in collaboration with the people of the city. It has to be done in a way that works, in a way that is human scale, in a way that does not forget quality of housing or green spaces and quality of public spaces. Let's go on to the next slide. The urban design policy is a monumental new policy that we have created over this past term. It was something the Pirate Party wanted to do in the 2018 to 22 term, but there wasn't political consensus, so we made it one of our main policy goals for this term that is now ending. And even though it took some doing and it took some time, both on the political level and the professional level, to get everyone agreed about how it should work, it was in the end very successful, and I do believe we have a fantastic product. In November 2025, the City Council unanimously approved Reykjavík's first urban design policy, and this was really a passion project for the Pirate Party. Even admitting that one of our members who was in a leading role has since switched parties, this was something we were all working together on. And even the parties who disagree with our particular policy focuses on how the city should be built, they all agreed that we should have a policy of this kind, that this was a great first step, and that even if they disagree, it's better to have this and then maybe modify it later than to not have this. It took 2 terms. We had to go through 3 mayors to get there, but it passed without a single vote against. And as it says here, the policy sets out how the city should grow. The buildings should be in proportion and respective to their surroundings and the lay of the land. Ground floors that face the street and invite life and are sort of part of the urban landscape. They're not closed off. Greenery that is woven into every part of the built environment. And if, for instance, we have to have a wall that does not have windows for structural or reasons of how it is used, it should have either artwork or plant life or something on the outside to make it more human scale and more approachable to humanity that lives around it. The public spaces that we have need to have shelter from the wind, they need to be sunny, and they need to be usable and inviting to people. We have a lot of examples in the recent-ish past where some of these goals have been met, but because we didn't have a standard for what we needed to do, some elements of this have been left out, and we see that they really all have to be there for this to work. We have some like open squares that, because they didn't have proper wind sheltering, people don't want to use them, or because they didn't have sufficient greeneries, people don't want to use them. So it's important that we have all this on a checklist and people know about this. So the Reykjavík urban design policy, which is the first of its kind, is a promise to residents that we tell them or listen to them in terms of what they can expect as the city develops around them. It doesn't just happen any old way. For developers, it removes ambiguity, because some people were concerned that it would add a level of complexity and would delay things and would ultimately lead to slower development and higher housing costs. This is not the case, and everybody, even the architects and the developers, are ultimately happy with what we did, because instead of having to go back and forth on, like, they send in a development plan and we go, no, you have to have a bit more space between the buildings, and then they come back and how about this? No, now it's too high. Instead of having to go back and forth 2, 3, 4 times about all of this, they know at the outlay what our expectations are, so they can design whatever they're trying to develop in accordance to that design. So for everyone, it's just simpler. Having clear standards means less back and forth, fewer delays, faster planning, and this is good for everyone. And the policy works across 4 areas: the landscape, the buildings have to follow the terrain rather than fight it; greenery, that surrounds rather than decorates; and water is managed naturally rather than piped away. It's used as part of the urban landscape, so-called blue-green surface water solutions. The building form talks about scale that feels human, variety in height and use, and enough light and shelter to make outdoor spaces worth using. And that leads us to the buildings themselves: the facades that engage the street, entrances that are visible and welcoming, edge zones that blur the line between inside and outside, and that also have these visual cues on the outside so that people walking by or using the spaces nearby get a sense of this building being for people and not just a massive box that sometimes has happened, unfortunately, before we had this policy. Having this policy also gives us a clear method of telling people no when they don't abide by it. So that's something that is important for the future. The spaces between buildings, such as residential courtyards, streets designed for people first, and public spaces, those should give residents somewhere to actually be. Spaces where you want to live, want to be, and where if you are there, you feel that you are in a human environment and not an ant in a colony or something like that. That is quite important. So, this leads us to walkable Reykjavík. Walkability doesn't happen by accident. It requires density in the right places. That's not to say the whole city needs to be super dense. This means that there need to be dense areas in neighborhoods in the central area and along the axis of the City Line bus rapid transit system. It gives us these city streets that are designed for people rather than cars, ground floors that put life at street level, and with the density we have the basis of services and shops in walking distance. If we have density, we also have the basis for a really good public transit system where everybody can live within easy walking distance of a high capacity public transport system. That is really important in terms of pollution, in terms of traffic, and in terms of having a city where you have freedom of choice in terms of how you move around the city. The policy sets clear standards in terms of how the building should be oriented towards the sun to take into account the sort of lay of the land. Iceland is a northerly place, and that means that usually the southern end of houses is the one that gets the most sunlight. This means when you have a plot, usually you want the house to be on the northern end and whatever open space you have to be on the southern end. It means that if you are having an enclosed area, you want the northern end to be higher and the southern end to be lower so that it lets in more sunlight into the open space in between. All sorts of things. Streets that curve in a way that break the wind, that we aren't making continuous long sort of conduction areas that create wind effects and what do you call it? Wind tunnels, exactly. Ground floors with varied uses and genuine entrances, top floors with variable uses, so it's not like, so everything isn't the same. We don't want to live in carbon copy blocks of each other, but they still need to follow a certain design principle. There is a 330-300 rule that runs through this design policy. Residents should be able to see 3 large trees from their home. They should live in a neighborhood with at least 30% tree canopy. They should be within 300 meters of green public spaces. More density does cost a little bit more for developers to do properly, but it is much cheaper for society in the long run. Infrastructure is cheaper. We don't have to maintain as many cars. There isn't as much pollution. And if we build in a dense way, we can build more. I firmly believe that. If we build more new low-density neighborhoods, they don't have the capacity for services in walking distance. That means that more trips have to be made by car. That means that you have to go outside the neighborhood in a car to get these services. That means a lot more car trips per day that get added onto the already overloaded traffic system. So this is really important. It's also good for homes to be able to get by with 0 to maybe 2 cars instead of having to have 1 to 4 cars. That's just cheaper for the home. Green Reykjavík is one of our core policy areas. Green space in this policy is not something that is nice to have, it is part of the structure. Vegetation reduces flood risks, it improves air quality, it cuts wind load, and has a measurable effect on mental and physical health. We know this. People feel better when they live in an area where it has green areas and vegetation. The policy requires greenery on rooftops, along facades, in courtyards, and at street level. Rain gardens, permeable surfaces, and green roofs manage stormwater on site rather than sending it straight to the drainage system. This is good for the environment. It is also good for the drainage system because otherwise it can get overloaded. So the city has a stated goal that all rainfall within a plot should be managed within that plot. Of course, in some edge cases it may not be possible, but this should always be the design goal. Welcome. Welcome. Reykjavík for cycling. We have had a very successful few years now of increasing cyclability in the city. Reykjavík now has 50 kilometers of separate cycling paths, which is up from 32 kilometers in 2020, and even much less than that in the years before that. This has been a huge change that has happened in the past 8 years, and Reykjavík is now a cyclable city, even though there is still much that can be done to improve this. I really think we cannot overstate how much of a change this has been, and we really need to keep this going. It's part of the transport agreement between the municipalities and the state government, and people tend to overlook it, but it is really important. In the next few years, we're going to be connecting several of the longer paths so that it becomes easier to go long distances on these cycling networks, and it's very important that we do not lose focus and drop this ball. Separated cycling paths means they have to be genuinely separate. They're not painted lanes on roads with cars. They have or shared with walking paths. Dedicated infrastructure where cycling is safe and practical year-round. We want to keep building on this, including better bicycle storage. We want to help people to be able to store their bicycles safely in public spaces and in condo buildings and in workplaces. And we need high-speed cycling corridors that connect across the city and between the municipalities as well. This is also important. People have to be able to live in Hafnarfjörður and work in Reykjavík and cycle between those. And they have to have a high-speed cycling corridor that doesn't make them have to slow down for walking pedestrians or cars all the time. This is very important. So continued investment in this network makes cycling a real alternative rather than a leisure activity or something that just the really focused sort of expert cyclers can get into. With the advent of electric bicycles, we are also seeing that this is becoming more viable for a higher number of people, so it is important that we build up infrastructure that works for everyone. So, I've mentioned this a little bit before. The Capital Area Transport Agreement. 6 municipalities and the national government agreed on a shared transport plan with common goals, shared funding, and fixed timelines. It covers the city line, Borgarlína, road improvements, cycling infrastructure, smart traffic management across the region. Borgarlína is the right solution for Reykjavík's size and density. And I cannot stress this enough. This was worked out very professionally and apolitically 15 years ago or so. And it has taken some time to reach first a professional consensus, then a political consensus, and to sign a formal agreement. And then we had to rehash that agreement to reach also a financial decision on how costs would be shared. This has all taken time, but we are finally en route to finishing this. So there have been delays, but I cannot stress enough that we are now past these delays, and the last thing we want to do is to lose sight of the goal now, because this has taken 10 years to get to the place where it's really, really happening. If we cancel it now for whatever reason, these municipalities and the government are never going to invest the resources in anything like this again, or at least not for the foreseeable political future. We cannot make this a failure. Then we will never get proper modern public transport. So, when Borgarlína is complete, 70% of residents will live within 400 meters of a stop where services run every 10 minutes or less during busy hours. For it to work, it needs dedicated lanes. It needs to not be in mixed traffic where it can be avoided at all. Which is, this is what will make it reliable. Reliability is what will make people use it. And having short wait times. If the frequency is such that the city line arrives every 7 or 10 minutes instead of every 20 minutes or 30 minutes, that means you don't have to think about when the bus is coming. You just go to the stop and you take the next one. That's a huge difference in terms of how we think about it and how we use it, and makes it much more usable. It is a crucial element. And another crucial element is that the buses not be stuck in traffic. They need to show a market benefit for those who use it. They need to get downtown fast, and that is also how we maintain capacity. This is how we get everyone downtown. So, in the meantime, Strætó has already improved a lot. We have more frequent services, longer operating hours, and we have introduced contactless payments in our buses now. These are very good improvements, and we are seeing a real increase in how much people are using it and how happy people are with it. So, we are on the way. This all fits together in that the urban design policy sets the standard for how the city grows, with density built to that standard that makes walking and cycling viable options. So a higher percentage of all the trips done in a day can be walking or cycling or on public transit. This means fewer cars on the road at any given time, less traffic for those who have to use cars. This is not about punishing people for using cars. This is about making viable options and about reducing the overall load for people however they want to travel. Walkable, cyclable neighborhoods reduce the pressure on the road system, and better roads combined with a functioning Borgarlína make the whole network work. That's a great sentence. Reykjavík is able to get this right. Píratar are the party that have been championing this. We are a party that is going to see this through. People are waffling all over the place right now, and we're not having it. This has to happen. This is the professional choice. This is the only way forward to make a modern city that we can all be happy to live in. So, let's shape the future of urban design together. And thank you all for coming. If there are questions, I'd be happy to take them.
I think we were gonna do just, questions, answers, any comments, something like that. But